As we get rolling in the offseason here, there's a lot of different headlines we could see. Obviously, Derek Carr getting ready to sign his contract extension, whatever that may be, even though it could actually be a lot of money. But I don't really have a problem with it as long as they just please get this man some help. Just take enough that where you feel good, but also leave some for your teammates so you can, obviously get some help around you to go win a Super Bowl. Am I right? But I think there's another thing that needs to be considered here. Now, before I get into this, Purple for the Win podcast is a podcast that I listen to pretty much every morning as I'm getting ready for work. I'm getting ready to do a lot of things, and they brought up an interesting question, and that was if the Vikings could trade or should trade Dalvin Cook, who makes over that $9 million mark, that $10 million mark for the Vikings. Because of a recent article put out by CBS Sports, and we'll go ahead and link that down to the description below. But basically, all it outlined was talking about for the last 10 years, dating back to I believe 2009, where the running backs made over. Basically, none of the highest paid running backs made it to the championship game. Like, they never won a championship. And that's kind of startling to me because obviously the Vikings, they got a lot of work to do. I'm not even going to go there. But the Raiders are one of those teams that are so close in a lot of different regards offensively. Darren Waller, Hunter Renfrow, Josh Jacobs. You got Derek Carr, an offensive line. You got Colton Miller. The rest of that, I think we need some to figure some things out there. But I mean, overall, you've got a lot of promise there. You even saw what they were able to do and make it all the way to the playoffs last year and lose to the eventual Super Bowl AFC participants by a touchdown. Literally, they were an armpit hair away from going to the the divisional round or something like that. So listen, the Raiders are close. But there has to be a bigger question here that I think is that it has to be asked. If you look back at the article, you see guys in 2020 with the Buccaneers, Leonard Fournette, who was the leading back. He made $2 million. The Chiefs with Damian Williams, the year before that, made $1,050,000. The year before that, the Patriots, Sony Michel, made $480,000. And so the list goes on. But in other words, none of these running backs, none of these top rushers made over $2.5 million. And I know Josh Jacobs is still in his rookie contract. You love what you got from the man. He is a big-time player. Don't get me wrong, a big-time player. I love Josh Jacobs. But this is the time where the offseason where we look at all the options. And another thing is, if you look back at the Patriots, they've had some good running backs, don't get me wrong, but none of those, from my recollection, were first-round draft picks. Maybe Sony Michel was, I don't remember off the top of my head, but there was not a lot of draft picks that were legitimate first-round draft picks. And I think at the end of the day, that franchise, especially with Josh McDaniels and pretty much the fact that he's bringing over everybody from the Patriots, I think they know that they can get running backs in the later rounds, even undrafted guys. I think they were one of the biggest and latest examples in the last decade, I think, is Danny Woodhead, that they got over from the Jets. Like, nobody knew who Danny Woodhead was, but once he joined the Patriots, people got stock real quick. So I think, the Raiders are one of those teams that if they want to space some of this cap hit out, if they want to, build for the future, I think it at least has to be considered. And it's not like the backs behind Josh Jacobs weren't respectable. I mean, you saw some good things from Kenyon. Wow, I'll try that again. You saw some good things from Kenyon Drake. You saw some great things from Peyton Barber. And again, not to mention the fact that you could get, guys like James Cook that are coming up in the NFL draft. Like, there's a lot of good running backs in this draft that you could get in that 3rd to 7th round. Look at Elijah Mitchell from the 49ers for everything. I mean, the man ran for over 900 yards, and he was a 6th round draft pick. So I don't think that if the Raiders, I wouldn't necessarily have a problem if they traded away Josh Jacobs. I think you could still get, especially one more year in his rookie contract. He's a good player. He is a difference-making player. And I think that's how that the Raiders could go ahead and pitch that to another team. Could they? I think they could get all the way up to a first-round pick for him. I do, because he's still a good player. I think he can be a focal point of an offense, a focal and vocal point. How about that for size? I think he's still a really good player. And if teams don't want to give up a first-round pick, you can get our second-round pick. And if we're being honest, like we have said from the very beginning, the Raiders are one of those teams that doesn't need much. But if you get an extra second-round pick out of a player that, if we're being honest, was injured for a good portion of last year, yes, when he was on the field, he was a difference maker. But if you can get a second-round pick, get another bite at the apple for all the other positions you have to fill in the draft, why not not take the shot? I mean, I just honestly, I don't have a problem with it. I also don't have a problem with them keeping Josh Jacobs because, again, I think he's a really good player, and I think he's going to continue to be a good player if he stays on the Raiders. So overall, again, this is not saying we should say the Raiders should trade Josh Jacobs, but we're saying let's look at every possible scenario, and I think it could be considered, especially with obviously with Josh McDaniels and Dave Ziegler in the building now. So and I think they come from a organization, they come from a mentality that you don't have to have a top draft pick that goes out and gets a number one ball carrier. Now, I may be wrong in that. There might be one in the last decade, but the vast majority of those guys like James White, those boys weren't first round draft picks. I think the NFL just in general is starting to realize you don't need a first-round draft pick at running back. You can go out and get, a lot of good players. Like we mentioned, the long list of players that we said. And like we said, right now there were some players that really took over for Josh Jacobs when he was down with injury. So, yes, do you love Josh Jacobs, what he brings to the team? Yes, but overall, everything needs to be considered. If you want to win a Super Bowl, you have to look at everything, and that includes the possibility of trading Josh Jacobs. But let us know what you guys think. Make sure you guys like and subscribe down below. Leave a like and a comment. It helps people find the show. We greatly appreciate all the support that we've gotten and continue to get. You guys are all truthfully awesome. We love every single one of you. If you guys also would remember to give us a listen and sub on iTunes, you can find that in the description down below. In the description down below, you'll also find all of our social media platforms, so give us a like and a follow there. And finally, if you have anything else you'd like us to cover, send us an email at thesportsbp@yahoo.com or put in the comment section down below and we would love to cover it. Well, more in the middle there. There we go. Okay. But let us know what you guys think about the possibility of the Las Vegas Raiders possibly trading Josh Jacobs.